Now that we know the ins and outs of keyframe operations, let's animate more components. Go to the land cover task mode and open the Spruce Fir Forest Ecosystem Editor. On the rules page, the maximum slope that this ecosystem currently renders on is 45 degrees. Create a key for this value at 0 seconds. So at the beginning of the animation, 45 degrees. Change the maximum slope to 90 degrees. Create a key at 20 seconds. And let's view the timeline for the maximum slope. Beginning of the animation, 0 seconds, 45 degrees is the maximum slope for ecosystem. End of the animation, 20 seconds, 9 degrees, which means everything. Let's close that window and activate main view, render preview. Sure enough, we have forest everywhere at the end of the animation, just like we wanted. Well, let's move to the water task mode. You can see we're going to animate just about everything here. Open the Ocean Lake Editor, and we're going to animate the lake elevation. To start with, change the elevation to 1800 meters, 1800, and keyframe that. Create a key at 0 seconds. Activate the main camera view, F8 to switch to real-time mode. And let's go back to the beginning of the animation. Let's use the frame slider. We want to move forward until we just pass the top of the tower. Yeah, just there. We just coming up. Tower disappears from view. Oh, somewhere a little over 6 seconds. Let's make the ocean elevation visible at the bottom of this frame at this time. We just opened this editor, so the ocean is still the current activated object. So Control, click, and there's our water. Create a key at this time. There we go. Back to the beginning of the animation. And let's play it. If we set the keyframes correctly, the water should appear to rise ahead of us, and as we go by the island. It may not be obvious in the preview, but the ocean level rises to its maximum value and suddenly stops. We'll be able to catch that again as we swing by. Back to the beginning. Water comes up ahead of us. Stop. Okay, let's see if we can smooth out that transition. Lake elevation, animation operations, let's view timeline. Sure enough, the ocean elevation, it rises up to its final value, that keyframe, at a little over 6 seconds, and stops. To make the rate slow as it approaches maximum value, select that second keyframe, change its tension to 1. You'll probably recognize this as the same change we made to the camera latitude and longitude timelines earlier. Keep your changes, save the project, go back to the beginning. Let's just play it to see what happens. Water comes up, slows, and you can barely tell it's stopping, which is just what we wanted. Great. Back to the beginning, and let's go to sky task mode. Here we have our moon celestial object that we're going to animate. So let's open its editor to the size and position page. So we want to animate the position. And let's go back to the beginning of the animation so we can see where our moon is in that frame of reference, and keyframe it. So at 0 seconds, that's where we want it to be. Move the moon to set the end of the animation, And we want it to be setting. So we're still in move mode. Let's drop it down. Drop it down. Oh, about there. And we're not going to use move mode anymore. Let's go ahead and remember to click out of it so we don't accidentally do something later on. Keyframe it. Create a key at 20 seconds. So that takes care of the moon. Let's save the project. And then it's time for the light. So go to the light task mode where our island sun resides and open its editor. The position and orientation page is where we set position by time. You may recall we set it to 3 p.m. to give us an afternoon light. Well, in this case, let's have that afternoon light be the end of the animation. So go ahead and create a key for 20 seconds. So at the end of the animation, the light will be in its 3 p.m. position. Change the time to 9 a.m. Create a key. And this is going to be at the beginning of the animation, or 0. Save the project. We're back at the beginning here. Let's go ahead and play the animation and see what happens. So the sun comes up in the east, reaches a noontime high midway through the animation, and then drops to the west. This is easier to see in the planimetric view as the terrain shading changes are a little more obvious here during the course of the animation. That looks good. Stop the animation. Stop the animation. Okay, it stopped. Last component we're going to animate is the high tension tower 3D object. 3D object mode. Although we can't import animated objects from other programs into VNS, we can animate object position, rotation, and scale, and deform the object by animating vertex positions. Now, we're not going to get fancy and animate vertex positions, but we are going to change its position. So expand the 3D objects category, open the high tension tower, object editor, and go to the size and position page. Keep in mind that 3D object axes follow a different convention that terrain axes do. For terrain, the x-axis runs east and west, the y-axis runs north-south, and the z-axis is elevation. For a 3D object, see if we can get this where we see it, 3D object, the x-axis is still east-west, or left-right, but the z-axis is now north-south, or depth, and the y-axis is elevation, or height. According to the dimensions here, x-axis, which is left-right, it's about 82 meters wide. Y-axis is tall. It's about 123 meters tall and 27 meters deep. We're going to animate position and cause the tower to sink into the ground. It will start the animation at its current elevation relative to the ground, so create key for the elevation and make it 0 seconds, the beginning of the animation. Move your frame slider to the last point you see the whole tower, which is somewhere between 2 and 3 seconds. By this time we want the tower gone from view, so change its elevation to minus 125, which is about what its height is. Keyframe that. 2.5. And let's view the timeline. You should be very used to seeing this by now, because 0 tension at keyframes is the standard. So you can see we start out sinking, it gets to its lowest point and stops. This May work for some things, but for most things it's not much for smooth transitions. So to make the rate of ascent ease in and ease out, change each keyframe tension to 1. Keep the changes. Back to the beginning of the animation. Save the project. Let's play it and see what happens. Tower going down, water coming up, moon sinking, light getting higher. We don't see it, but the ecosystems are growing on steeper slopes. Sun is still climbing. It's late afternoon. By the end of the animation, we have forest on everything, the light at 3 o'clock, the moon is down, and we're ready to move on to the next phase of the project.